Hey guys, so we're doing this video on how to balance work and marriage life. We've had quite a bit of experience because when we started dating, we immediately started working together, and I feel like that made us mature a lot more in our relationship very quickly. And so the question that was asked specifically by someone was if finding a spouse that has the same career path as you is important. And Dennis had a good answer to that. And then we will be going into the things that we've run into, some issues, how we solved them, and how to make sure that you separate marriage and keep the romance alive, I guess, with the work and everything like that.
So to answer the work relationship and is that important to actually have a spouse with a similar career path? I would say in short, it's going to be no. I think that's kind of irrelevant, but it also depends on how involved and how important work is to your personal life and how it actually affects your life. So when we first started, our whole life was centered around work. And even though we had different career paths, we found ways to constantly work together. So it helped a lot because even though we weren't remote at first, we would find times to work together in coffee shops and constantly hang out. And I think that this would be very tough if she had a 9 to 5 and had to be somewhere all the time. And it would definitely take a toll on our relationship because that was where we spent probably 95% of our time for the first 5 years of our relationship. It definitely helps to find a way to blend it in, but just make sure that they're not affecting each other too much. So if they're too separate, I can see where that might be an issue.
Yeah, like if one wants to, stay home and be a homebody.
Yeah, I mean, if one of you guys wants to put down your roots somewhere and hang out at home and kind of, live the community lifestyle, and the other one wants to go and travel abroad and do all this stuff, that's definitely going to be a conflict. So try to seek those things out early. But if you get to know each other throughout the process, you can kind of weed those things out and maybe even change your own personality type. I mean, we changed constantly through our relationship and found things about ourselves that we had no idea we even liked. So we definitely try to figure that out early, though, before you get too committed into the relationship. It's nice to work those things out.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some of the issues that we ran into right away. And like I mentioned earlier, because we pretty much almost took on a marriage relationship right when we started dating because we had to work together right away. So it wasn't always like, you go on romantic dates and stuff. We didn't really do any of that, like maybe a few times, but we mostly had to work together. So we immediately got to see like the issues that he would run into and how I would have to deal with that, or the issues that I would run into and things like that. So it was definitely a little tough. And after that, it became a lot easier because we made it so important to fix that right away. And so here were some of the things that we ran into. The first one was that it would be very hard for me. Like, I'm very sensitive as a girl. I'll cry at anything, even literally like Finding Nemo, I cried. So when he would be like frustrated, irritated with work, I would immediately take it as a personal thing, and I would think like, oh my gosh, is this a way of him telling me he doesn't like me or something like that, So it was definitely very hard. So I had to learn very quickly to not take things very personally and to understand that this is a job and this is how you have to understand that people need to change and that your work isn't always perfect, things like that.
Yeah. So we started where I was running a marketing company, so she worked for me right away. And the challenge that we faced was the fact that with any employee that you're working with, you can critique work and you can just kind of say what you need to say and get things done. Well, when you're dealing with your wife or a girlfriend at the time, it's a little bit differently. You're committed to this person for life. You're walking on eggshells because work stuff can't get involved in what you're dealing with as far as your personal life. And when I would have to critique something or she would have to design a logo and I was very picky with what I wanted and I would say something, just advising something, she would take it personally thinking, oh my gosh, is he not proud of me? Is he attacking me for something personally? And the way we solved that was I had to sit her down and just tell her up front, just say, hey, this is how I have to get points across. I have to deal with all these guys and this is how we need to be able to communicate this stuff. And I can't say things and have you be so sensitive. And at the same time for her, I had to let her know that while I'm giving you advice, I'm going to make sure to be as gentle as possible and keep in mind that while I'm trying to say this, I'm also considering this. So I'm going to have to say it in a very nice way so she knows that I'm coming from a place of just needing to get things done or a place of love.
Yeah. So the part for me that was hard is that I would want to talk about things right away first, and I noticed very quickly when I would talk to when other girls would talk about this, it was the same way where you kind of want to get it all out of the way right away, but the guy wants to go away and not talk about it, kind of wants to shut down. So what would help me was to realize that that is a good opportunity for you to see if it's even important to bring up, because most of the time you realize that it's not, and you end up just bringing something up that ends up causing more issues or will ruin your day or whatever, just out of ego or pride. And the second thing was that you can't bring up these types of relationship things during work. Like, so for example, I would bring things up to him that had to do, later on when we got married, was, bills stuff, whatever, things like that, or like shopping things. And I would bring it up to him while he's in the middle of coding something out, or,
dealing with a stressful problem.
Yeah, dealing with a high stressful problem. And that was definitely not a good thing to do on my part. So I would say find a moment where you're also not on a date night, and you're not on a work schedule. So find a time in between, and also don't just start talking about it. I would ask him like, hey, is it okay if I bring up this situation? Because of us being in an entrepreneurial lifestyle, your mind is constantly on your business. And I know that like sometimes, like, if we're taking a walk or whatever, I can tell when he's thinking about work or things like that. And so I would ask him like, hey, is this a good moment to talk about this? Like, if it's not, if you're going to lose your train of thought, then just let me know. So we'll, let each other know when we want to talk about something, so that we're not just throwing it on them right away, even if it is a good moment. Even if you think that it's a good moment, it might not be a good moment for the other person.
Yeah. And what this did for me was, it helped me understand that when she was trying to bring something up, and let's say I was, at max stress at that moment, she would find that moment to where I was calmed down or just not under this pressure, and she would address the problem or give me, ask me a question, whether that was about bills or a future plan. And to me, what it showed was that she was involved in our marriage just as much as I was trying to be. So she truly cared about my personal feelings and would try to find the best time to address these things. And I feel like a lot of times in the way relationships are portrayed, it's kind of like this little fantasy world. And I don't know how to properly say this, but girls kind of have this dream made up for them. And I feel like a lot of them will get married just because it's the thing to do. It's, they want to find the perfect husband and then live, this dream lifestyle and have mimosas. So a lot of times, and it was,
this between is a mimosa. I'm just kidding.
So between me and Solomita, she was actually really good about it, but I still would often feel like, as the guy, as the one trying to push, this family and try to make things work, that I would feel like sometimes you're just providing the lifestyle. And this is where, for the girls, a lot of a guy's pressure comes from this, is they feel like they're having to provide the lifestyle, they're having to do all this stuff, and then the girl, the second something doesn't work out, is critiquing him on something. Well, we didn't take that trip somewhere, or we didn't get that house or that car, and he feels like he's just being berated with these expectations of him. And by her understanding my problems and addressing them in the right times, I felt like we were in this together, that she truly cared about what I was going through and was saying, hey, we're going to work this out together, and we're going to deal with everything in the right time. And she kind of made me relax and feel at peace that she was here with me and not just full of expectations for me. That was a huge relief on me.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to add was, with the good timing and bringing things up, is not to just bring up marriage things at a good time, but also personal things. Like if you were offended by something, or if you don't like, the way, I don't know, the way, like they might have embarrassed you in front of someone or something like that. Thankfully we've never said anything hurtful to each other, and there's never anything big like that. We noticed that our problems are always miscommunication because we were raised differently. So for example, like, don't bring it up when you're mad at each other. Like, don't start calling things out or whatever. I noticed that when you bring something up to him in a good moment, and you tell him like, like we'll be driving the car somewhere, and I'll just be like, hey, by the way, like, I just wanted to, like, this has been on my mind, and like, I just want to let you know that, like, I love you, and I'm bringing this up because I want our relationship to get better, not because I'm trying to put you down or anything like that. And that way, when Dennis does a good part of receiving that, because then he says, okay, thank you, I'll think about that, and I'll try to work on that, instead of just defending himself right away. So, like, I think the biggest thing is to be humble. And the other part was, if you come to them with a good heart, and instead of being like coming to them with frustration, then they won't have a negative connotation with,
I don't feel attacked.
He won't feel attacked. So that way, whenever you come to him with something, he's going to see that as a moment of love instead of a moment of feeling attacked, and then he'll want to, do that change instead of feeling like closing off and just being like, well, forget that. I'm not going to do any of that, or I'm not going to work on that or something. So,
yeah. So one part I did want to address is for the guys, and this is work-life balance, and I'm going to jump from where we were originally going to discuss, but as far as work-life balance goes, as a provider, as somebody that's, let's say, if you're the one leading the charge in the family and financially supporting everything, it's very easy to get caught up in this and completely get zoned out and feel like you always have to provide. And that's what I kind of went through, where I would get so involved that we wouldn't go on dates for months at a time, and that was very, very hard. And what I had to realize was that this was hurting our personal life. It was hurting my personal health, and it was just a spiral effect downwards. And what I had to do is try to take time and make little moments just for her to make her happy. And just chemically, the way we're wired, a guy can be the provider, but girls need somebody to provide in many cases. They're looking for a provider, and then they're also looking for emotional affection. So I was stuck on the providing part, but the affection part I would miss out a lot on, because I always felt like I just had to do my job. So I would learn to take time to do things that weren't interesting to me, but that I knew would just make a moment for ourselves and would make her happy. Even if I didn't enjoy it, I would try to, would go watch a movie, and I can care less about a lot of that kind of stuff, but I would have to make time for something like that. And then a goal I set for myself was, and never let myself go above this, was to go to bed at a reasonable hour so we can go to bed together. So she's not in bed by 10 and then I'm going to sleep at 2 in the morning. Going to sleep together, these relationship types of things are very important for both of us, but especially I think for the girl, just because they are normally more emotionally attached to this kind of stuff.
So another good way for work-life balance, as Dennis was saying, was we made it pretty strict quickly to not have our phones out when we're on dates or anything, because we run our own business, we're kind of our own marketers too, so we have to keep up with things, respond to emails, like you wearing 5 different hats at the same time. So it's hard to make time for each thing throughout the day, but when we go on date nights, we make sure to not be on our phones, and if we do need to take something out to respond to a quick email or take a note, we'll check in with the other person first, see if it's okay with each other.
And as far as turning off work in certain hours and time when you're spending with each other, also for the guys, women in many cases want to be involved in your work life, so I would always make it a point to not to lay on my stresses on her, but to share my successes and what's going on, and share those fun times in business and what was going on. So work should actually be fun. If you're not having fun in work and business, something's wrong, and you definitely need to change something up. But sharing those experiences in her business, and I'll take time to know what she's involved in and what she's going through, whether it's stressful or a happy moment. Being married young, that was cool because it molded us very early, and we were able to actually watch both of our businesses and what we know now. We were able to see ourselves grow in that and see all these revelations and share in that excitement.
So the woman's strength is creating a peaceful environment for the man, like how Dennis was saying that the guy, is a provider with finances and everything like that, and they kind of go through hell, they carry a lot on them.
In most cases, just because we're an offended culture, so we have to state that.
Yeah.
Someone's going to get offended and comment, well, the women provide too. Yeah.
Well,
we know.
So they kind of go through a lot here, and their suicide rates are high and everything like that, and like the devil knows that a woman's strength is creating peace, and so that's why you see in a lot of shows or movies or whatever, you hear this a lot, that the woman nags the man a lot, and this kind of drives him further away from her and like creates a more stressful environment. But we need to understand that a woman's strength is her peace by creating a peaceful environment and like a joyful environment, so that way he can come home and understand that you're the one that is helping him out, and you're not putting him down like the world is putting him down. Like you're the one that's bringing him up and creating the peace, and a lot of prayer, of course. Like I'll pray over him and speak over him and tell him how how awesome he's doing, how grateful I am. Like, and don't forget that also when we go on date nights, and I'll tell him thank you for buying me coffee and for dinner and things like that, because
she'd make me feel very appreciative that I wasn't just working, but she saw my efforts and everything I was trying to do for her. And as far as from the guy's perspective, I would come home and I would want to come home, because I've actually seen relationships where the guy just wants to go out to a bar and drink after, just because he doesn't want to go home to another situation. Well, I would come home and she'd create this oasis for me to where I would be able to come home and just give her a hug and rest and actually make myself vulnerable and, sounds funny, but fall in her arms in a sense, because I knew that was my place of peace, and I would actually draw strength from that. And then I can go out the next day and get back to work when I needed, fully recharged, and knowing that home is where things are peaceful, and find rest in her. So I'll just close this part out then, because someone's too emotional. But we would always find time to pray with each other and for each other, and not just in our own time, but actually spend time and give ourselves an hour of Jesus time, and just
take communion together. That's
taking communion
too.
together.
So I probably still have tears in my eyes. Feel emotional, but yeah. So we hope this helped you guys. Let us know in the comments if there's any more questions. We'd love to do more videos like this. We're not like an old wise couple or anything, but we yeah, so I don't know, just create a place of conversation or anything like that. But yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope this helped you guys. Right. And we also wanted to say that we are going on a trip this weekend for 10 days, and I'm going to make a post, and whoever can guess where we're going will win the free preset pack of their choice. And then we're going to be doing daily contests while we're on this trip for 10 days. So I'll be giving away preset packs. So just stay tuned, and yeah.